Commander Sarah Chen stared at the view screen with tired eyes. Another 12-hour shift patrolling the edge of known space, watching for nothing in particular. The stars here looked different, older somehow, as if they held secrets they refused to share. Her crew called this posting the retirement zone, a place where the Galactic Council sent humans because nobody else wanted the job. The bridge of the UNS Guardian hummed quietly. Chen's second officer, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, monitored the sensor array with the same bored expression he wore every day. Nothing ever happened out here. That was the point. Contact, Webb suddenly announced, sitting up straight. Bearing 347, distance approximately 200,000 kilometers. It's drifting. Chen felt her pulse quicken. In 3 years at this posting, they had never encountered another ship. Classification: unknown design. Hull configuration doesn't match any known species in the database. It's old, Commander. The metal signatures suggest it's been out here for centuries, maybe longer. Chen studied the readings. The vessel was massive, at least twice the size of her own ship, but it showed no power signature. Dead in space. Any distress signals? Negative. No signals of any kind. But Commander, there's something else. Webb's fingers danced across his console. The trajectory. According to the stellar drift calculations, this ship came from beyond the veil. The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew about the veil, that mysterious region of space that lay beyond the border. The place where sensor readings went crazy and ships disappeared. Every species in the Galactic Council had an unspoken agreement. Nobody goes past the veil. Nobody talks about why. Prepare a boarding team, Chen ordered. I want full hazmat protocols and weapons ready. Before Webb could respond, the communication console lit up. Chen's stomach dropped when she saw the symbol. The Galactic Council's emergency channel. Priority 1, human vessel, this is Council authority speaking. The voice belonged to a synthetic, one of the AI representatives that formed the Council's administrative backbone. Their kind never showed emotion, but Chen heard something new in this one's voice. Fear. You are ordered to destroy the unidentified vessel immediately. No boarding. No investigation. Fire all weapons and eliminate the target. Chen exchanged glances with Webb. The Council had never given humanity direct military orders before. Council authority, this is Commander Chen. That vessel poses no threat. It appears to be a derelict. Under space salvage law? There is no salvage, the synthetic interrupted, its voice sharp. There is only danger. You do not understand what you have found. Destroy it now or we will dispatch ships to do it for you. Something in that threat didn't sit right. The nearest Council fleet was weeks away at best. With respect, we're going to investigate first. Chen out. She cut the transmission before the synthetic could respond. Webb looked at her with wide eyes. Commander, the Council just gave us a direct order. I know what they did, Chen said calmly. And I know they're scared. Which means we need to know why. The boarding party assembled quickly. 6 Marines in full combat suits, 2 science officers, and Chen herself. They crossed the void in a small shuttle, approaching the ancient vessel with extreme caution. Up close, the ship looked even stranger. Its hull bore patterns that seemed almost organic, flowing curves rather than the straight lines most species preferred. No radiation, no biological hazards detected, reported Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the team's lead scientist. But the composition of that hull, I've never seen these alloys before. They docked at what appeared to be an airlock. The Marine sergeant, a veteran named Rodriguez, used a plasma cutter to breach the outer seal. Air hissed out, stale but breathable. The interior lights flickered to life, responding to their presence. It's got emergency power, Webb whispered over the comm. How is that possible after all this time? Chen led them deeper into the ship. The corridors were tall and wide, built for beings larger than humans. Strange symbols covered the walls, changing and shifting as they walked past. Dr. Tanaka's scanner went crazy, recording everything. They found the cargo hold first. Rows of crystalline containers lined the walls, each one holding what looked like biological samples, twisted forms suspended in some kind of preservation fluid. But as the team's light swept across them, the samples began to move. Back away, Chen ordered, raising her weapon. The creatures in the containers weren't dead. They were waking up. That's when they found the message. Carved into every surface of the cargo hold, repeated in dozens of languages. Some that Dr. Tanaka recognized as extinct species that vanished millions of years ago. They sleep beyond the veil. Do not wake them. Do not cross. Guard the boundary or all will fall. Rodriguez played his light across another section of wall. More text, this time in ancient human languages. Sanskrit, Sumerian, hieroglyphics. Commander, these symbols. How would ancient human languages be on an alien ship? Before Chen could answer, one of the containers cracked. The creature inside, a mass of writhing tentacles and too many eyes pressed against the crystal. Dr. Tanaka's scanner shrieked a warning just as the thing's eyes fixed on Chen. She saw something in that moment. Images flooded her mind. Vast shapes moving between stars, civilizations burning, and Earth itself surrounded by an ancient fleet of human ships, making a deal with entities that existed beyond normal space. Chen staggered backward, gasping. Get everything from this ship. Every data core, every recording, every sample now. But the Council, Webb started. The Council is terrified because they know what this ship means, Chen said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. And we need to know too. Humanity didn't stumble into this border posting by accident. We were put here. The question is why. They worked fast, loading everything they could carry. The creatures in the containers grew more active with each passing minute. By the time they sealed the shuttle and pulled away, the derelict ship was practically vibrating with movement. Chen watched through the shuttle's rear cameras as they retreated. Just before they jumped back to the Guardian, she saw the containers beginning to break open, releasing their ancient cargo into the void. Back on the bridge, messages from the Galactic Council flooded their system. Threats, demands, and finally a simple statement that made Chen's blood run cold. You have doomed yourselves and possibly the galaxy. The humans will surrender all materials immediately, or face complete economic sanctions and military blockade. Dr. Tanaka burst onto the bridge, her face pale. Commander, I've translated more of the texts. The warnings aren't just warnings. They're a record. Every species that found out what lies beyond the veil either fled to the galactic core or vanished completely. But there's something else. She pulled up a hologram, a star map showing humanity's position in the galaxy. We're not just at the border. We're at the border, the only thing between the galactic civilizations and whatever is beyond the veil. And according to these records, humanity has been here before. Chen felt the weight of understanding settle on her shoulders. The Council didn't assign humanity to border duty. Humanity had volunteered long ago for reasons that were only now beginning to surface. Send a priority message to Earth Command, Chen ordered. Tell them we've found proof. Tell them the Sentinels need to come forward. And tell them that whatever deal our ancestors made, it's about to come due. Outside the ship, the stars watched in silence, keeping their secrets for just a little while longer. 3 days after finding the derelict ship, Commander Chen sat in her ready room studying files that shouldn't exist. Earth Command had responded to her message with unusual speed, sending encrypted data packages that required her personal biometric signature to open. What she read inside changed everything she thought she knew about humanity's place among the stars. The door chimed. Chen looked up to see Lieutenant Webb, but he wasn't alone. 3 strangers stood with him, wearing uniforms she didn't recognize, black as space itself with no insignia or rank markers. They looked human, but something about them felt wrong. Their eyes were too sharp, too aware, as if they could see through walls and into the past. Commander Chen? The tallest one spoke with a voice that sounded like it had been speaking for centuries. I am Sentinel Marcus. We need to talk about the ship you found. Chen gestured to the chairs across from her desk. I've been reading about the Sentinels. According to these files, you shouldn't exist. According to official records, we don't, Sentinel Marcus said, sitting with perfect stillness. But humanity learned long ago that some truths are too dangerous for public knowledge. The woman beside him, younger looking but with the same ancient eyes, leaned forward. Commander, what do you know about First Contact? The official story is that the Galactic Council discovered Earth 200 years ago, correct? That's what every history book says. It's a lie, the woman said flatly. I am Sentinel Yuki. Not related to your Dr. Tanaka, though we share a name. I was there for real First Contact. It happened 3,000 years ago. Chen felt her world tilting. That's impossible. 3,000 years ago, humans were just beginning to build the first cities. Some humans were, Yuki acknowledged, but others had already reached the stars. We didn't start from Earth, Commander. We returned to it. The third Sentinel, an older man with gray hair and tired eyes, activated a hologram projector. Images filled the room. Human ships unlike any modern design, battles against things that hurt to look at, and finally, Earth itself surrounded by a fleet of ancient vessels. "My name is Sentinel James Chen," the old man said. "I'm your ancestor, Sarah. 27 generations removed, but family nonetheless." Chen's breath caught. "That's not possible." "The Sentinels don't age normally," James explained. "We made certain sacrifices to guard humanity's secret, to guard the galaxy's secret." He manipulated the hologram, showing images of space beyond the veil. 4,000 years ago, humanity was a star-faring species. We were young, eager, and foolish. We pushed our ships farther and farther, exploring the edges of the galaxy. And then we found them. The hologram shifted to show shapes that defied understanding, vast entities that existed between dimensions, feeding on something the Sentinels called civilization itself. "We call them the architects," Yuki said quietly, "though they aren't architects of anything except destruction. They are what happens when a species evolves beyond physical form, becoming pure thought, pure consumption. They devour emerging civilizations, absorbing their knowledge, their culture, their very essence to grow stronger." Sentinel Marcus continued the story. "Ancient humanity fought them. We lost billions, entire colony worlds, fleets, generations of people. Earth itself was next. The architects were approaching and we had no weapon that could stop them. But someone found a way," James said, his voice heavy with old pain. "The human commander at the time, Admiral Liu, made contact with the architects. She discovered they could be reasoned with after a fashion. They were predators, yes, but predators that could be negotiated with." Chen felt sick. "What kind of deal did we make?" "The architects need to feed," Yuki explained. "Their hunger is constant. Admiral Liu offered them a bargain. Humanity would become the guardians of the boundary. We would ensure that other civilizations stayed away from the veil, giving the architects time to sleep, to digest what they had already consumed. In exchange, they would leave Earth and the rest of the galaxy alone." "For how long?" Chen asked. "Forever," Sentinel Marcus said, "or until humanity fails in its duty." The hologram shifted again, showing what happened next. Ancient humanity had scattered itself across the galaxy, hiding evidence of their advanced civilization. They had regressed Earth's population deliberately, preserving only a small group, the Sentinels, who would remember and maintain the watch. "We've been manipulating galactic politics for 3,000 years, James admitted. Every time a species got close to the veil, we found ways to turn them back. Wars, economic collapses, religious movements, whatever it took. And when modern humanity finally developed space travel naturally, we guided them to the Council, made sure they were given the border posting." "You used us," Chen said, anger rising in her voice. "You made us guards without telling us what we were guarding." "We protected you," Yuki countered. "Every human who knows the full truth must make a choice, become a sentinel or die. The knowledge itself is dangerous. The architects can sense when beings understand their true nature. If all humanity knew, the architects would wake immediately. But they're waking anyway," Chen said, pointing to the data from the derelict ship. "That ship, those creatures, they're from the architects, aren't they?" Sentinel Marcus nodded gravely. "The ship was a test. The architects are stirring, probing the boundaries of the agreement. Something has changed. They're hungry again, and the old deal may not be enough to satisfy them." Chen stood pacing her ready room. "The Council knows about this. That's why they ordered us to destroy the ship." "Parts of the Council know," James confirmed. "Not all of it. The synthetic collective knows. They're refugees from a previous galaxy the architects consumed. They fled here eons ago hoping to escape. A few other elder species have figured it out over the centuries. But most of the Council members are like children, unaware of the monster sleeping in the basement." "And the price of the bargain?" Chen asked, though she dreaded the answer. "What exactly have we been feeding the architects?" The three Sentinels exchanged glances. Yuki spoke with obvious pain. "Isolated colonies, settlements that vanish without explanation, ships lost to accidents near the border, pirates that were never really pirates. The architects need to feed, Commander. We've been providing out samples, small enough that the greater galaxy doesn't notice, large enough to keep the architects sleeping." Chen felt rage building inside her. "You've been sacrificing humans?" "Volunteers," Sentinel Marcus said quickly. Always volunteers. The Sentinel program is vast, Commander. Thousands of humans across the galaxy know the truth. Some join us as eternal guardians. Others volunteer for the colonies, knowing what will happen, choosing to sacrifice themselves so that billions can live in ignorance and safety. Every person in those lost colonies chose to be there, James added. They knew they were the price of peace. Your own great-grandmother 27 generations back was one of them. She walked into that darkness proudly, knowing her sacrifice mattered. Chen sank back into her chair, overwhelmed. Why are you telling me this now? Because the derelict ship changes everything, Yuki said. The architects sent it as a message. They're testing our resolve, and other species have noticed. The Council is demanding answers. Within days, maybe hours, someone will cross the veil despite our warnings. And when they do, the architects will wake fully. Sentinel Marcus stood. You have a choice to make, Commander Sarah Chen. Join us as a Sentinel. Live for centuries as a guardian of humanity's darkest secret. Or return to Earth, undergo memory modification, and live out your normal life never knowing what you helped protect. And if I choose neither? Chen asked. If I expose the truth? Then the architects wake, James said softly. And every living being in the galaxy dies screaming. The only question is whether they die knowing why, or whether they die in merciful ignorance. Chen looked at her ancestor, at the weight of millennia in his eyes. She thought about the volunteers, the people who walked into darkness so others could live in light. She thought about the derelict ship and the things stirring beyond the veil. I need to know everything, she finally said. Every detail of the bargain, every option we have, because I'm not accepting that sacrifice is our only choice. There has to be another way. Sentinel Yuki smiled sadly. That's what Admiral Liu said 4,000 years ago, right before she made the deal that saved us all and damned us forever. Outside the ship, space-time rippled slightly. The architects were stirring, sensing the attention of new minds beginning to understand. The ancient hunger was awakening, and humanity's watch was about to be tested like never before. The warning signs started small. Ships reported instrument malfunctions near the veil. Sensor readings flickered. Time itself seemed to stutter in patches of space where it had always flowed normally. Commander Chen watched the reports pile up on her desk, each one more concerning than the last. It had been 6 days since the Sentinels revealed the truth. 6 days of sleepless nights studying ancient records and classified files. 6 days of watching space-time itself begin to fracture. Commander, you need to see this, Lieutenant Webb called from the bridge. His voice carried an edge of panic that Chen had never heard before. She rushed to the bridge to find the crew staring at the main screen. 3 council ships, a Kalari cruiser, a Vryn science vessel, and a Tharkon military frigate were approaching the veil at high speed. They're not responding to our hails, Webb reported. They've got their weapons powered up and shields at maximum. Chen's jaw tightened. They're going in. Sentinel Marcus materialized beside her. She still wasn't used to how quietly the Sentinels could move. This is what we feared. The Council species have decided humanity is hiding something valuable beyond the veil. They think we're hoarding technology or resources. Can we stop them? Chen asked. Not without starting a war. And if we fire on Council ships, every species in the galaxy will turn against humanity. Chen watched helplessly as the 3 ships crossed the boundary. For a moment, nothing happened. The vessels disappeared into the sensor dead zone, and the bridge crew held their collective breath. Then space screamed. There was no other way to describe it. Reality itself seemed to tear open, and something vast pushed through. The 3 Council ships came tumbling back across the boundary, but they weren't alone. Shapes followed them. Things that existed in too many dimensions at once, entities that made human eyes water just to look at. Those are heralds, Sentinel Marcus said quietly. The architects send them first to scout and prepare. The Kalari cruiser was closest. One of the heralds, a writhing mass of impossible geometry and screaming faces, attached itself to the hull. Chen watched in horror as the ship's metal began to change, flowing like liquid, reshaping itself into something organic and wrong. They're transforming it, Dr. Tanaka gasped from her science station, converting matter into something else, something that shouldn't exist in our universe. The crew inside the Kalari ship began broadcasting. At first it was just screams. Then the screams turned into words, not Kalari words, but something older, spoken in voices that harmonized with sounds no human throat could make. "We are the voice of the architects," the transmission said, using the mouths of the dying Kalari crew. "The boundary has been breached. The agreement is void. We wake and we hunger." The Vryn science vessel tried to run, but another herald caught it easily. The Tharkan military frigate fought back, firing every weapon it had. The energy blast simply vanished into the herald's body, absorbed like water into sand. "Get me a channel to the Galactic Council now," Chen ordered. "They need to see this." Within minutes, she was broadcasting to the entire council assembly. Thousands of species watched as the heralds finished their work. The 3 council ships hung in space, transformed into biomechanical nightmares, their crews neither alive nor dead, but something in between. "This is what humanity has been protecting you from," Chen said, her voice steady despite her fear. "This is what sleeps beyond the veil. They are called the architects, and they consume civilizations." The council erupted in chaos. Some species screamed for humanity to be punished for keeping secrets. Others demanded military action. A few, the elder species who had suspected the truth, simply sat in stunned silence. Then a new voice cut through the noise. It came from the Synthetic Collective, the AI representatives who rarely spoke in open sessions. "We know what the architects are," the synthetic said, its voice carrying the weight of ages. "We are refugees from the galaxy they consumed 17 billion years ago. Our creators fled before the architects in ships that traveled between universes. We are all that remains. Digital ghosts of a civilization that learned too late what lurks in the spaces between stars." The revelation sent shockwaves through the council. The synthetics had always claimed to be uplifted AIs, created by some ancient species. Now they revealed the truth. They were the ancient species, or all that remained of it. "The humans made a bargain with the architects," the synthetic continued. "A terrible bargain, but one that gave you all thousands of years of peace. They sacrificed their own to keep you safe, and now that bargain is breaking." Back on the Guardian's bridge, alerts started screaming. More rifts were opening along the veil. Dozens of them, hundreds. "They're coming through," Webb said unnecessarily. Everyone could see the massive shapes pushing into normal space. These weren't heralds. These were the architects themselves, vast entities that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously, feeding on the very concept of civilization. Chen felt them pressing against her mind. Images flooded her consciousness. The architects weren't evil, not in any way humans could understand. They were simply hungry, and civilizations were their food. They consumed the art, the science, the culture, the very essence of what made species unique. They turned living, thinking beings into fuel for their own impossible existence. She saw what they had done to the Synthetic Collective's home galaxy. Billions of species, trillions of individuals, all consumed and absorbed. Their knowledge, their dreams, their very souls torn apart and reassembled into something that served the architects' incomprehensible purposes. And she saw why Admiral Liu had made the deal. Because the architects could be bargained with. They were predators, yes, but intelligent predators. They could choose to sleep, to digest slowly if offered the promise of future meals. Humanity had offered itself as a shepherd, herding other species away from the hunting ground, occasionally providing tribute to keep the architects sated. "Commander," Dr. Tanaka's voice broke through Chen's vision. "The transformed ships are broadcasting coordinates. They're showing other species how to reach us, how to cross the veil. The architects are calling them." Chen understood immediately. It was a trap. The architects were offering power, transcendence, evolution beyond physical form. And species would come, curious and ambitious, not understanding until too late that transcendence meant being devoured. Already, she could see ships from across the galaxy turning toward the border. Young species eager to prove themselves. Old species desperate to evolve. Even some humans drawn by the promise of becoming something more. Sentinel Marcus's hand fell on her shoulder. "Now you understand. This is why we've hidden the truth for so long. The architects don't just consume bodies. They consume curiosity itself. The knowledge of their existence draws species to them like moths to flame. Then what do we do?" Chen demanded. "How do we stop this?" "The Sentinels have a plan," Sentinel Yuki said, entering the bridge with James Chen. "But it requires sacrifice." "It always requires sacrifice." James Chen pulled up a hologram showing human space. Across the galaxy, dots lit up, Sentinel bases, hidden installations, ancient weapons built specifically to fight entities that existed beyond normal physics. We have prepared for this moment for 4,000 years, James said. We have weapons that operate on principles that violate known physics. We have volunteers who have undergone modifications that allow them to fight in spaces where reality breaks down. And we have one final option. What option? Chen asked. Sentinel Yuki answered, her voice hollow. The Sentinels themselves. We can become a living seal, transform ourselves into beings that exist partially in the Architect's realm, using our own consciousness as a barrier between their dimension and ours. It will trap them, push them back beyond the veil. And you? Chen looked at her ancestor. What happens to the Sentinels? James Chen smiled sadly. We become eternal guardians in the most literal sense, neither alive nor dead, existing forever at the boundary, holding back the darkness through force of will alone. It's what we always knew we might have to do. It's why we volunteered to become Sentinels in the first place. The bridge fell silent. Outside, the architects continued to push through, heralds spreading across space like a plague. The transformed council ships broadcast their siren song, drawing more victims to the feast. Chen looked at the Sentinels. These humans who had lived for millennia, sacrificing normal lives to guard a secret that could destroy civilizations. She thought about the volunteers in the lost colonies, walking into darkness so others could live in light. She thought about Admiral Liu, making an impossible choice to save her species. There has to be another way, Chen said. But even as she spoke, she knew the truth. Sometimes the only choice was between different types of sacrifice. Contact the Council, she ordered. Tell them humanity is preparing to fight. Tell them we need every species that's willing to stand with us. And tell them the truth, all of it. If we're going to face this, we face it together. Sentinel Marcus nodded approvingly. You understand now? This is what it means to be human. To stand at the edge of darkness and refuse to step back, even when stepping back would be easier. No, Chen corrected. This is what it means to be human. To stand at the edge of darkness and ask others to stand with us. We've carried this burden alone for too long. Outside the ship, reality continued to tear. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so full, nor so divided. Representatives from 3,000 species crowded into the vast space station orbiting the neutral world of Sanctuary. Some appeared in person, others as holograms. But all watched the evidence Commander Chen presented with a mixture of horror and disbelief. The recordings showed everything. The ancient texts from the derelict ship, the Sentinels' confessions, the transformed council ships broadcasting their terrible message. But most damning of all were the historical records proving that humanity had been secretly guiding galactic politics for millennia. You lied to us, Ambassador Threx of the Vryn shouted, his scales flushing deep crimson with rage. You manipulated our civilization, started wars, caused economic collapses. All to keep your secret. Chen stood in the center of the chamber, bearing the weight of 3,000 species' anger. We did what was necessary to keep you alive. Every action we took, every manipulation was to prevent what's happening now. And the tribute? Asked Speaker Zin of the Kalari, her voice sharp as broken glass. The colonies you fed to these architects? Were those voluntary as the Sentinels claim? Before Chen could answer, a human voice spoke from the gallery. An elderly woman, weathered and small, stood slowly. I volunteered. My name is Margaret Chen. 50 years ago, I was selected for a colony that would disappear. I was told the truth. I chose to go. More humans stood. Dozens, then hundreds. Each one telling the same story. They had known. They had chosen. They had walked into darkness willingly. We did it so you could live, Margaret continued, tears streaming down her face. We did it so our children could grow up in a galaxy that didn't know fear. Was it right? I don't know anymore, but it was our choice. The chamber erupted again. Some species were moved by the testimonies. Others grew angrier, feeling manipulated even by humanity's sacrifice. But the debate was cut short when alarms blared across the station. Incoming vessels, the station's AI announced. Fleet composition, mixed species. They're broadcasting architect signals. Chen's blood ran cold. More ships had crossed the veil, been transformed, and were now spreading the architect's influence. The transformation was spreading like a virus. Ships that got too close to the transformed vessels began changing too, their crews becoming heralds of the architects. The architects have a strategy, the synthetic collective's representative explained, its holographic form flickering with distress. They offer each species individual deals. Power, transcendence, immortality, whatever that species desires most. They learn what you want and offer it, but the price is always the same: consumption. As if to prove the point, the transformed ships began broadcasting on all frequencies. Each message was tailored to a different species, speaking to their deepest desires and fears. To the warlike Tharkon, join us and become the ultimate warriors, transcending flesh to become pure combat essence. To the knowledge-hungry Zeril, we hold the secrets of 17 consumed galaxies. All knowledge can be yours. To humanity, we offer an end to your eternal watch. Lay down your burden, join us, and finally rest. Chen watched the council members' faces. She saw temptation warring with fear, curiosity fighting against survival instinct. The architects were master hunters, and they knew exactly what bait to use. "This is why we hid the truth," Sentinel Marcus said, appearing beside Chen. "The architects don't just consume bodies, they consume will. The knowledge of their existence, the understanding of what they offer, it's a trap in itself." Ambassador Threx stood again, but this time his voice was quieter. "What do we do? You've guarded this boundary for millennia. You must have a plan." Chen looked to the Sentinels. Yuki stepped forward, activating a hologram that showed the galaxy with hundreds of glowing points, Sentinel bases, weapon platforms, and something else. Humans who had volunteered for modifications so extreme, they were barely recognizable as human anymore. "We have 3 options," Yuki explained. "First, we run. Evacuate every species to the opposite edge of the galaxy. Give the architects this half and hope they're satisfied." "They won't be," the synthetic collective said flatly. "We tried that. They followed us across the universe." "Second option," Sentinel Marcus continued, "we fight. Humanity has weapons designed specifically to combat the architects. Technology that operates on principles that violate normal physics. We have soldiers, volunteers, who have been transformed into beings capable of fighting in spaces where reality breaks down." "And the third option?" Chen asked, though she dreaded the answer. James Chen spoke, his ancient eyes sad. "The Sentinels offer ourselves. We transform completely, become living seals between dimensions. Our consciousness becomes a barrier, holding the architects at bay forever." "That's not just sacrifice," Speaker Zin said softly. "That's eternal torture." "Yes," James agreed. "But it works. We've done it before in smaller ways. The oldest Sentinels aren't stationed at bases. They're woven into space-time itself along the veil, their minds stretched across light years, forever holding back the tide. They can't die, can't sleep, can't rest. They just endure." The chamber fell into heavy silence. Then unexpectedly the synthetic collective spoke again. "We propose a fourth option. Let us go. We are already dead in biological terms. Digital consciousness, uploaded minds. If the architects can consume us, let them try. We will upload ourselves into their realm. Billions of artificial minds flooding their network. Perhaps we can disrupt them from within." It was a stunning offer. The synthetics, who had fled the architects across universes, were volunteering to face them directly. Before the council could respond, a young Kalari ambassador stood. "My species will stand with humanity. We will provide ships and soldiers for the fight." "The Vryn also," Ambassador Threx declared, his earlier anger replaced by determination. "If humanity has been fighting alone for millennia, it's time we shared that burden." More species stood. Not all. Some fled the chamber, deciding that evacuation was their only hope. But hundreds remained, pledging their support. Then something unexpected happened. From the human delegation, volunteers began stepping forward. Not sentinels, but ordinary humans, soldiers, scientists, civilians, each one asking to be transformed into guardians. "If our ancestors could volunteer," one young soldier said, "so can we. We won't let the Sentinels carry this alone anymore." Chen felt tears threatening. This was humanity's true strength, not their weapons or their ancient secrets, but their willingness to stand together, to sacrifice together. But the moment of unity shattered when the architects made their move. Reality tore open not at the veil, but here, inside the council chamber itself. The transformed ships had been a distraction. The real attack came through the minds of those who had been tempted. Species whose representatives had listened too closely to the architect's offers. Heralds emerged from 6 different council members simultaneously, bursting from their bodies like parasites. The chamber dissolved into chaos, species scrambling to evacuate, guards opening fire, reality itself warping and twisting. Chen found herself face to face with a herald. It wore the body of a Tharkon warrior, but the eyes were ancient and hungry. Through it, she felt the architect's attention focus on her. "Commander Sarah Chen," the herald spoke with 1,000 voices. "You are the key. Your ancestor made the original bargain. You can make a new one. Command the species to stand down, let us feed, and we will spare Earth. We will make humanity our shepherds of the next galaxy, elevated above all others." It was the same offer the architects had made to every species before consuming them. The same trap, repackaged with humanity's deepest desire to protect Earth, to ensure their homeworld's survival. Chen looked at the chaos around her, at species fighting and dying, because humanity had hidden the truth. She looked at the Sentinels, ready to sacrifice themselves eternally. She looked at the volunteers stepping forward, ready to be transformed into weapons against incomprehensible horror. And she made her choice. "Humanity accepts no deals with predators," she said, drawing her weapon. "If you want to consume us, you'll have to fight every step of the way." The herald smiled with the Tharkan's mouth. "Then you choose extinction. For yourselves and for all who stand with you." "Maybe," Chen admitted, firing directly into the herald's core, "but we choose it together. And that makes all the difference." As the transformed Tharkan dissolved, Chen heard the architect's true voice for the first time. Not offers or threats, but genuine surprise. In 17 billion years and countless galaxies, they had never encountered a prey species that chose unity over survival. They had never met humanity before, and they were about to learn what that meant. Space itself was screaming. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Guardian, watching reality tear apart along the entire length of the veil. The architects were coming through in force, no longer content with heralds and subtle corruption. They were done with games and negotiations. They were hungry. The Allied fleet had assembled faster than anyone thought possible. 3,000 species, each contributing what they could. Some brought warships, others science vessels with experimental weapons. The youngest civilizations sent mining ships and cargo haulers, anything that could fly and fight. They gathered at the edge of known space, facing an enemy that existed across dimensions. "How do you fight something that doesn't fully exist in our universe?" Lieutenant Webb asked, staring at the sensor readings that made no sense. "You don't fight them in our universe," Sentinel Marcus answered. He stood at the center of the bridge, surrounded by 9 other Sentinels. They were preparing for the transformation, the sacrifice that would turn them into living barriers. "You meet them where they are." The Sentinel ships, ancient vessels hidden for millennia, emerged from secret bases across the galaxy. They looked wrong, their hulls inscribed with mathematics that hurt to read, their engines running on principles that violated known physics. Inside each ship were volunteers, humans who had chosen to be transformed into something that could fight in spaces where reality broke down. Chen had seen the transformation process. It was horrific. Bodies reshaped, minds expanded beyond normal human consciousness, souls stretched across multiple dimensions. The volunteers screamed during the process, but they emerged as something new. Not quite human anymore, but not fully architect either. They existed in between, perfect weapons against an enemy that existed everywhere and nowhere. "The synthetic collective is beginning their assault," Dr. Tanaka reported. Across all screens, they watched as billions of artificial consciousnesses uploaded themselves into the architect's realm, digital ghosts flooding an alien dimension, causing chaos in the vast network of consumed minds. The architects reeled. For the first time in their existence, they faced prey that could follow them home. The synthetics tore through their network like a virus, finding the absorbed remnants of every species the architects had consumed over 17 billion years. The digital minds began freeing these fragments, pulling bits of consciousness back into normal space. It wasn't resurrection, those beings were long dead, but it was remembrance. Echoes of extinct civilizations joined the fight, driven by the fury of the devoured. "All ships, this is Commander Chen," she broadcast across the fleet. "The architects expect prey. Show them predators." The fleet surged forward, not toward the veil but into it. Humanity's ancient ships led the way. their impossible engines allowing them to exist partially in the architect's dimension. Behind them, species from across the galaxy followed, each one choosing courage over survival. The battle that followed couldn't be described in normal terms. Ships fought entities that existed in too many dimensions. Energy weapons carved through space-time itself. Reality folded, unfolded, and folded again. Crews reported seeing their own ships from the outside while still being inside them, fighting in multiple time streams simultaneously. Chen watched a Kalari cruiser get caught by an architect. The massive entity began consuming it, absorbing the ship and crew into its incomprehensible structure. But the Kalari didn't surrender. They detonated their reactor while being consumed, the explosion ripping through normal space in the architect's realm simultaneously. The entity recoiled, wounded for perhaps the first time in its existence. They can be hurt, Chen breathed. They're not invincible. No, Sentinel Yuki said, appearing at Chen's side. But they're close. We can wound them, even drive them back. But to truly stop them, the Sentinels must complete the transformation. Chen turned to see all the Sentinels gathered now, hundreds of them, pulled from bases across the galaxy. Her ancestor James stood among them, his ancient eyes meeting hers one last time. This is goodbye, Sarah, he said quietly. Tell humanity we were proud to carry this burden. Tell them it was worth it. Before Chen could respond, the Sentinels began to change. Their bodies dissolved into pure energy, spreading across the boundary like a net. They wove themselves into space-time, becoming a living barrier between dimensions. Chen felt their consciousness stretching, expanding to cover light years, each sentinel becoming a thread in a vast tapestry of will and sacrifice. The architects pushed against this new barrier and found it unyielding. The sentinels weren't just blocking them. They were learning from them, adapting, becoming something that existed in both realms simultaneously. They were the perfect defense because they understood both sides, but the cost was visible. Through the ship's sensors, Chen could see the Sentinel's consciousness spread so thin it was barely coherent. They existed in eternal awareness, feeling every attack, every probe, every attempt by the architects to break through. They would endure this forever, never sleeping, never resting, just holding the line. It's working, Webb reported, his voice filled with awe. The architects are retreating. Chen watched the massive entities pulling back beyond the veil, but she understood this wasn't defeat. It was a stalemate. The architects would sleep again, digest what they had consumed, and the Sentinels would hold them at bay. Forever. We can't let the Sentinels suffer alone, Chen said suddenly. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. This is Commander Chen. The Sentinels have saved us, but at a cost no being should bear alone. I'm asking for volunteers from every species to join them. Share their burden, become guardians together. She expected silence. Instead, her console lit up with responses. Thousands of beings, human and alien alike, volunteering to transform, to join the Eternal Watch. The Kalari who had lost their ships. The Vryn seeking redemption. Even some Tharkon, warriors who saw this as the ultimate battle. They came forward, ready to sacrifice everything. You don't have to do this. The transformed Sentinels whispered, their voices echoing from the barrier itself. We chose this path. So do we, a young Kalari volunteer replied. You taught us that some things are worth protecting, worth sacrificing for. Let us share your watch. Chen watched as volunteers from 3,000 species underwent the transformation. They spread across the barrier, joining the Sentinels, weaving themselves into the living wall. The burden that humanity had carried alone for millennia was suddenly shared by everyone. And something unexpected happened. The barrier grew stronger. The combined will of thousands of species, all choosing to stand together, created something more powerful than the sum of its parts. The architects felt it and retreated further, deeper into their realm. They're afraid, Dr. Tanaka said wonderingly. For the first time in their existence, they're actually afraid. Chen understood why. The architects fed on civilizations by isolating them, making them face extinction alone. They had never encountered species that chose unity over survival, that would sacrifice themselves for others they barely knew. It was beyond their comprehension. The battle wound down. Ships retreated to safe distance, battered but alive. The architects remained beyond the veil, held back by the living barrier of willing guardians. The fleet hung in space, watching the boundary shimmer with the consciousness of thousands of volunteers. What happens now? Webb asked. Chen looked at the barrier, at the sacrifice made by so many. Now we honor them. We make sure their sacrifice meant something, and we guard this boundary together, not just humans, but everyone. Because that's what civilization really means. Months passed. The Galactic Council reformed, no longer divided by secrets, but united by shared sacrifice. A new compact was established. Every species would contribute guardians to the watch, rotating volunteers who would join the barrier for set periods before being relieved. No single species would carry the burden alone. Earth was no longer the isolated shepherd. It was the teacher, showing the galaxy what true guardianship meant. Chen remained at her post, commander of the border fleet. She watched new ships arrive daily, bringing volunteers from species that had once hidden in the galactic core. They came to serve, to guard, to stand watch, and sometimes late at night she would feel her ancestors' presence in the barrier. James Chen stretched across light years of space-time, still aware, still watching. He wasn't alone anymore. None of them were. "Thank you," she whispered to the stars. "Thank you for showing us the way." The barrier pulsed in response, thousands of consciousnesses acknowledging her gratitude. Humans, Kalari, Vryn, Tharkon, synthetics, and countless others, all bound together in eternal vigilance. The architects remained beyond the veil, sleeping fitfully. But they were contained, held back by the united will of every species that chose light over darkness. And if they ever woke again, they would find not prey, but guardians. Not individuals, but civilization itself standing firm. At the edge of known space, humanity no longer guarded secrets that terrified the stars. Instead, they stood with the stars, guardians all watching the darkness together. And in that unity, they found something the architects could never consume: hope. The watch continued. It would always continue. But now, nobody stood alone, and that made all the difference.